Here's the fun part. Okay? Let's find what's underactive. Okay, let's find what's underactive. So this is my overactive musculature. See if you can do it without looking. Tell me what would be underactive.
Glutes.
Say again?
Glutes.
What part?
Minimus.
Say again?
Minimus.
Okay. Say again? All of your glutes would be, actually. Yeah, I know on your sheet you've got maximus and medius. Okay? And maximus, I'm going to come back to maximus. But we know medius and minimus, their primary job is what? Abduction, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. If my adductors are overactive, my abductors have to be underactive, right? It's just an opposites game. And if you know what your opposites are, this causes adduction, this causes abduction. If it's, so your abductor, well, not necessarily all, because remember your TFL is an abductor too. But good general thinking. If I've got my vastus lateralis as overactive, it will mean that my what? Vastus medialis, oblique, VMO, is going to be underactive. Because the vastus lateralis is pulling here, the medialis can't resist. Right? Absolutely. Now, the thing with the glute, and glute medius, glute minimus, those are abductors. Okay? Gluteus maximus is actually, it's a hip adductor. But it is also an external rotator. Okay? Which means from the hip it turns the toes. Wow, it's an external rotator. Okay, and actually, if you play with something, you just suspend your foot off the ground, leg nice and loose. You contract your butt cheek. You watch what happens to your toe. Just turns out. Because remember, the fibers of gluteus maximus run obliquely. So if I pull insertion towards origin, it's going to pull my toe outwards, right?
Yeah.
And that's supposed to happen. Okay? So we go. Glute max, we talked about, it's the thickest, strongest muscle in your body. Glute max alone, an isolated contraction can generate a force of like 66K. It could pull 66 kilograms.
Damn, that's some power, bro. That's some weight. But damn.
It's the most commonly underactive muscle in our body. One of the most commonly underactive muscles in the body. Because it just doesn't, it's not forced to be used unless we apply a significant amount of effort. Most people just don't apply enough effort, so that when they go to actually apply effort and lift and do stuff, glute max is kind of like, well, what's going on here? I don't know how to do this stuff. And so it doesn't. It lets everything else take over, right? So then we would do things, we would strengthen medialis, we would strengthen glute max. You know, here's where things like proper, when we talked about prone iso abs, right? Plank, contracted glutes, contracted quads. Work great for activating the glute. You know, we could do an exercise, we call it a, I don't know what the hell they call it, but you know, an exercise where you can have your client suspend, balance on one foot, tight core, right? Draw and embrace. You just simply reach forward, side, about 45 back. Activate the glute, right? I don't twirl. Just here. You know, as a warm-up, a dynamic warm-up exercise. Okay? Getting those muscles firing, externally rotating, extending the way that they're supposed to. All right? Now, there are other compensations that we can see from an anterior view that we're not going to cover right now. You have to go more in depth into some of the corrective exercise stuff, where you could actually see the knees move out. When you figure out the knees move out, that would just kind of be a counter of knees moving in, you know, for the most part. So, what was over would become under, what was under will become over. You know. Cool. Questions? Doug?
Dynamic stretching, is that for the underactive muscles or the overactive?
Lengthen the over, strengthen the under. Right. Working with this kind of stuff is a really good way to help you realize and understand agonist-antagonist relationships in the body and figuring out what does what. Okay? Cool. All right, so from here, we'll instruct, so we've taken our notes. You know, your client does their 4, 5, 6 reps. You're taking notes, you're thinking, it's okay, yeah, you can turn 90 degrees. Doesn't matter which way, okay? Whether you're looking from one side or the other, doesn't matter which way. And we're going to take the lateral view. In the lateral view, we'll be looking at that LPHC. Who remembers what LPHC stands for?
Lumbar.
Complex. Very good. The lumbo-pelvic hip complex. So now we're looking at areas like what? We're looking at the hip. We're looking at the lumbar spine. Okay? Stuff like that. So now we're looking here. Okay, what we're going to see? We're going to see a couple of things. One, we could see what's called an excessive forward lean. Okay, we've talked about, we know that when we squat, the angle of your back, you're happy you're squatting. The angle of your back and the angle of your tibia should be relatively parallel. Okay, they should be relatively parallel. And what we're going to see is we're going to see a deviation to something more like this. Your squat sucks, you're not happy anymore. So we're going to go from here, where we're relatively parallel, to here. Okay? And the body leans forward. All right? So, what's going to mean? So overactive. Well, first and foremost, what's going to pull your torso forward? Well, number one, we're going to have overactive hip flexor complex. Okay? Overactive hip flexors. Iliacus, psoas major, rectus fem. Okay? Pocket stuff. Abdominal complex, right? Because remember, the abdominal complex, especially rectus abdominis, internal external obliques, they are